Welcome back to Healing for Real. After starting the healing path at age 21, it felt like being born again. The gray of my old life peeled away and I started to fly. But flying also had its edges. Alongside those dizzying highs, I met catastrophic lows. Initiation fires that demanded every training and lesson I'd embodied along the way. In this video, I want to share the honest, ugly, and holy parts of that ride, so you know what a life devoted to healing really looks like. I'll first start with the highs of the journey. I have sat through hundreds of plant medicine ceremonies, from ayahuasca to yahe to peyote to San Pedro to mushrooms to tobacco and cacao, throughout Peru, Brazil, China, Spain, Denmark, Sweden, and the UK, with both traditional shamans and New Age shamans. I've apprenticed with various healers from different lineages in those same places. I've lived with Hare Krishna monks 1.5 months in the UK at their European HQ just outside of London. And I also did a 3-month sabbatical program, traveling with their monks around India, visiting their sacred sites. I've sat a couple of 10-day silent Vipassana meditation programs, and I've also completed a couple of service periods at their centers here in the UK. I've completed my death doula training at the School of Soul Midwifery, and I did a 6-month hospice ward placement, as well as some home visit placements. I've worked in various retreat centers and conscious communities around the UK and the world, doing odd jobs and support work, doing whatever I needed to gain hands-on experience in a range of different environments and therapies. I introduced my mom to plant medicine ceremonies in 2020. I requested as my birthday gift that she come with me, beginning a momentous change in her life, which ignited her new way of life and her new career path. My mother had suffered with depression since I was born, and during this plant medicine exploration, she came off antidepressants after 25 years of use. She just walked away from pharma and became a sound healer herself. Watching her transformation showed me what's possible. She totally transformed her life, created a flourishing sound healing school, which she now runs full-time, and she helps hundreds of people every year in the UK and beyond. My mum and I, together, we've hosted 3 different indigenous tribes in London who practice plant medicine. The Comensa tribe from Colombia, the Huniquin tribe from Brazil, and the Yuanawa tribe from Brazil. Together, we've hosted ceremonial events and retreats from right here within our family home in London. Personally, I've studied things like shadow work, black magic, exorcisms, supernatural forces, spirit offerings, and channeling. Not to glorify darkness, but to learn how to bring that darkness to the light. I've studied a plethora of religions, spiritual practices, as well as ways of worship, and gone to many different places of worship in the UK and around the world. And I've done a deep dive into meditation, devotional service, sauna therapy, exercise, eating habits, contemplation, karma yoga, and integration therapies. I've also studied very deeply Tantra, celibacy, brahmacharya, and semen retention. We have become very close to one man called Geshe Lama Abe Toku Rinpoche, who stays in our home a few months each year for the past 3 years, who has been confirmed as a reincarnation of a healing monk by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama from when he was 12 years old, and now he's approaching 53 years old. My mother and I personally met the Dalai Lama through our friend Rinpoche, and I got to touch the Dalai Lama's feet, and he got to touch the top of my head. We have built family businesses over the past decade, from an Airbnb business to an artisan shop selling sound healing instruments and paraphernalia, as well as supported my mother's sound school and her healing academy flourish to what it is today. So after 7 years of soaring to greater and greater heights, life has its funny way of working, and I was forced by life to accept the other end of the spectrum. And then I found myself in a very strange, very dark, and very mythical place. Now, this is so interwoven, so complex, so jaded, and so gray, because the biggest crisis points in my life happened years after going through the various spiritual trials and initiations, years after meeting and connecting with spiritual leaders and healers across the planet, as well as years after knowing and committing to a life of selfless service. These trials have made me test everything I've been learning and encountering and experiencing since committing to this healing path. It started with a falling out with some well-known and popular people within the healing fields in the UK, most notably the founder of Medicine Festival UK and some of his close friends in the summer of 2023. This falling out in the summer of 2023 led to me personally being banned and ostracized from Medicine Festival 2023, as well as our shop being cancelled there, which I'll go into more in a later video. Fast forward to early 2024, around 6 months later, I was living in India and drinking a lot of bhang, an ancient cannabis-based drink originating from India itself, doing a lot of prayers, meditation, and spending a lot of time at the cremation grounds contemplating life and death. And I had what I describe as my first undiagnosed psychotic break. During this time, I broke into a famous temple where foreigners are not allowed to enter. I got into fights with the priests and the pujaris who run that temple. I ended up getting arrested there. And once I was in the police station, I ended up fighting with the police. And during that fight, I got many pieces of glass wedged into my hand. I had to have surgery in India without the use of painkillers or anesthetics, where they basically used tweezers to pull out the shards of glass that were wedged into my hand. Subsequently, I was detained in an Indian psych ward for 48 hours after this botched job surgery for psychiatric evaluation. After I was released with an apology from the commissioner of police, once they had done their psychiatric tests and seen that everything was normal and nothing was wrong. A few days later, I had to return to England for an NHS surgery on my hand at Croydon University Hospital in South London to remove the shards of glass and to stitch up my hand. I spent 1 month sober and then returned to India and had another undiagnosed psychotic break, this time without the use of intoxicants, whilst at a Buddhist empowerment retreat in Bir, Himachal Pradesh by Dongsa Khenzi Rinpoche, a famous Buddhist teacher. I was arrested and detained one more night. The following morning, I was brought in front of the magistrate and then released without any charge or any further issues. Fast forward another 6 months to the end of 2024, and I had yet another undiagnosed psychotic break after diving deep with psychedelic medicines for 1 month straight. yahe from Colombia, which was left behind by our friend from the Comensa tribe, and magic mushrooms, which grow locally here in the UK. I entered so far deep down into the rabbit hole, which resulted in 2 arrests in England within a 1-week period and a subsequent remand in the notorious Wandsworth prison for 1 month, resulting in court cases and fines and community service, which I'm still paying back to this very day. During this period, I was threatened with NHS sectioning and the Mental Health Acts here in the UK multiple times. But every time I spoke with the mental health professionals, they considered me sane and normal and coherent. And yet I knew deep down that all of these processes and energies were part of something bigger. Somehow part of this training I'd been through the past 7 years and before. Somehow a natural evolution of my healing vocation. And despite having 4 assessments over a 4-month period, I remained undiagnosed by the NHS staff, who actually seemed to shy away every time I spoke about my spiritual practice, the teachers, the initiations that I'd been through. It was as if these things made me an alien in their clinical view of things. I didn't quite fit into the boxes that they had to prescribe. And so everything was kind of dropped and just blown away. Deep down, though, I know I'd gone through some type of psychotic break, or to frame it differently, some type of paradigm-shifting event, even if it was never officially diagnosed or acknowledged by the mental health service here in the UK. So I got a glimpse firsthand of the forces of the dark, which I'd studied for years. No longer flirting with them, but totally cheek to cheek with them. And the whole experience felt as if I was performing some ancient mythical dance. The kind where the shaman or the priest enters into a state. They play out the energy through their body. They get totally taken over by it. And then afterwards, they begin to return back to the world as we know it. After all of these experiences calmed and balanced and subsided in early 2025, just earlier this year, I visited one amazing Sikh doctor, Dr. Kamal Roop Singh, who took me under his wing for 1 week at his house, where he runs a healing program using traditional natural medicines and holistic practices. He's someone who has been close to both my mum and I over the past few years. And he told me if it wasn't for my previous spiritual training and time around the healers and spiritual masters, I wouldn't still be functioning and viable in the condition that I was in. Now, admittedly, I was in a bad way. I processed something huge, something that I'm still putting into words now, and things had to change dramatically. I wouldn't have lasted much longer walking down that path and slippery slope. But it seemed there was a method to the madness, some hidden purpose, some underlying logic to what I was embodying and processing and channeling. So, this path has never been about perfection. It's been about initiation, breaking, healing, breaking again, not failure, but strengthening. I've undoubtedly lost my mind. I've undoubtedly lost my community, and at points I've undoubtedly lost myself. And yet I know I had to walk it for myself, for those that come before me, and for those that will come after me. So eventually this spiral brought me to a standstill. I stopped running. I had to face myself. I began the work of integrating. And in the next video, I'll speak about what that turning point was. I'll speak about the sobriety, facing the labyrinth head on, and what it really means to begin weaving wholeness back together from a place of breakage and damage.